I bet you still don't know the most common sexual fantasy of women so far. And yes, you're going to be surprised. As always, make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my sensual topic choices. First, we'll look together at the most popular female fantasy, and then we'll explore what that really means for men and for our society's image of relationships, so stay tuned until the end of the video. Software engineers have researched the most popular female fantasy by collecting and analyzing billions of pornographic Google search queries made by both men and women. These two software developers later wrote in their book, Billion Wicked Thoughts, what actually turns men and women on sexually. For example, they found that men usually search for explicit images or videos, while women prefer literary descriptions. Yes, that makes sense. Women aren't necessarily aroused by the erotic scene between a busty student and her lover in a haystack. Much more exciting for them is to read about the event and then enrich it with their own imagination. Psychology professor Jordan Peterson discussed this book in one of his lectures available on YouTube, and through him I became aware of this topic about female fantasy. But it gets more interesting. The researchers performed a plot analysis of typical female fantasy stories, the kind found in romantic or erotic literature. They discovered that one specific type of story serves as the most popular stimulus for women. A young, attractive woman meets a man who seems dangerous, someone who exudes a certain threat or mystery. 5 archetypes appear particularly often: the werewolf, vampire, pirate, billionaire, and kidnapper. At first, I was also a bit surprised, but only for a moment. Because it continues. In the stories that women find arousing, the woman encounters this aggressive, wild man, seduces him, and manages to tame him. This entire dynamic, this idea of taming the beast, is what makes it sexually appealing for women. Peterson explains this in his lecture too. You don't have to agree with everything he says, but from a psychological perspective, it's fascinating. Especially because these results don't come from a survey of porn users or dating apps, but from an immense data set. These fantasies, he says, express the female desire for strength and dominance, showing a clear attraction toward men who display confident masculine energy. Peterson calls this the typical pattern. The woman seduces and tames the aggressive man. He compares it to Beauty and the Beast, calling it the female hero myth. He adds, it's not exciting to tame someone who's already tame. And really, why would anyone desire someone who's already completely domesticated? At this point, I'd love to know your opinion. Is it the gentle side of a man that attracts women, or the opposite? What are your personal experiences? Share them in the comments. My own opinion? Here, I agree with Peterson. A fully tamed man as a sexual fantasy is about as exciting as a train station restroom as a vacation destination. The idea of enchanting the beast and turning it into a civilized, loving being. There's nothing wrong with that. But does that mean men should be aggressive? Of course not. No one claims that women want aggressive men. It also doesn't mean he should sleep with a baseball bat under the bed. However, many women apparently desire a partner who could be instinctively protective or assertive if a situation required it, for example, in an emergency. In other words, that side of him may rest quietly inside, but he must be able to control it. As a woman, I can say, it's comforting to know that a man has that potential within him, that he can become dominant when necessary, so that others don't think they can just walk all over him. If it's for protection of his loved ones or his family, then it becomes a virtue. In times of chaos, say, during war or disaster, a lion is far more useful than a house cat. Of course, this is simplified, and not every woman feels this way. But biologically speaking, it makes sense. No matter how emancipated a woman may be, deep down this sense of a protective male presence still resonates within many. So how does this fit with today's discussions about toxic masculinity? That's a good question. And one that many men probably ask themselves. I've also watched a discussion between Peterson and other thinkers about this very topic. On the one hand, I can imagine it's not easy for men to balance all these traits of the unconscious female desire under one roof. On the other hand, it's difficult to align that with the modern image of a non-toxic man, because today men are expected to always be kind, calm, and sensitive. Masculine assertiveness is often labeled as toxic and should be suppressed. Yet, at the same time, they're expected to bring out the fury when it becomes necessary. Women, by nature, are somewhat contradictory beings, and it's no wonder that many men are confused about what is actually expected of them. But here's something important to keep in mind. If you, as a man, want to come as close as possible to the female fantasy, then having an eye patch and a pair of vampire teeth in your bedside drawer might not be such a bad start.